Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Dr. Rosenna Bakari. Dr. Rosenna Bakari is a psychologist, educator, and leadership business consultant who designs and delivers emotional wellness programs for individuals and organizations seeking sustainable performance and human-centered workplaces. Her newly released book, 7 Exits, Leaving Behind What No Longer Serves You, offers a grounded, practical path to lasting personal change, and it serves as the foundation for her transformational courses and consulting work. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you. And in the intro, we just talked about your book, The 7 Exits. I'd love for that to be the inspiration behind this episode. So if you wouldn't mind, especially for any listeners who are new to your work, if you could just jump in and explain what the 7 Exits framework is and how does it help leaders repair a struggling organizational culture they may have.
Sure. So it's a framework to, as cliche as it sounds, help people in organizations release the patterns that undermine their performance. So the thing is, when you think about change, when I hear people talk about change in my clients, people can readily tell me where they want to go. They see it. This is who we want to be. This is where we want to go. This is what we want to accomplish. What's really more difficult for people to grasp is what they're ready to leave. Doesn't matter if you know how to get where you're going if you are not prepared to leave where you are. So that is what I have found to be the missing piece in people's development. They want to get there. They know how to get there. Everybody tells them what they need. There's not a whole lot of path to say, yes, but what are the exits that you must make before you can even get on that path consistently? And so that's what the 7 Exits framework is. So it outlines these psychological energies that really keep us trapped where we are, even when it looks like we know the way.
I think that is so important because what I've seen also is people don't even know where they want to go. They don't have that vision and that endpoint. So it does sound great that you have people who do realize what that is. But like you said, a lot of times they just don't know what to let go and what they need to release to even start them on that journey.
Right. Yeah. So the vision is general. I want to make 6 figures. I want to be well known. I want their general. So people tell them and write books about what to do to get there, but they can't get there because they haven't even really been brave enough to take a look at what they need to release and where they are right now.
So would you mind doing a quick overview of what those 7 exits are?
Yes, I will. So the first exit is hyper ego. I always have to cheat and look at them and see to get them in order. So the first exit is hyper ego. And a hyper ego is, the ego is healthy. The hyper ego is not. Hyper ego keeps us attached to protective mode. And so when we're going for safety, then we don't get to where we need to be because safety is really the lowest level of development. People often get that wrong. Safety is the lowest level of development. It's the furthest away from self-actualization. And so hyperego keeps us in a low level of development. And so the second one is silence and secrecy, which is really interesting because when we're trying to protect something, we're trying to keep something secret. And it could be on a personal level. It could be things from, I don't even want people to know what my goals are. So I'm holding them so close. So I'm not asking for help. I'm not doing the things I need to do because I don't want to be embarrassed if I fail. So people keep things silent and secret. In organization, we know what silence and secrecy looks like. Going into your silos, not speaking, not holding on to accountability because you're afraid of what might happen and the consequences. So that's silence and secrecy. There's emotional dependency and stagnant relationships is the fourth one. They often go together in business, at least. Emotional dependency is about those relationships that we cling too tightly to make the best optimal decisions for the organization. And the reason that's so important is because then we come to stagnant relationships. And those are the relationships we don't allow to breathe or give room to because we're protected under emotional dependency. Keeps us in silos. It keeps talent hidden. And it may be more comfortable, but it's not productive. So those are those two. And then number 5 is complacency. That's what it sounds like. But complacency is easy to describe. It's really difficult for people to realize when they're being complacent, especially if they're being successful. So even if you're successful, does not mean that you're not complacent. Oftentimes when people become successful, They are more likely to become complacent because
Right.
then it feels like they have more to lose. I don't want to risk. I'm doing well. Look at me. So we stand inside of our accolades instead of really wondering or taking a risk to go to that next level. Number 6 is indoctrination. And in business, that looks like we're going to follow tradition. We're going to do the same things that we've done, either because it's safe or we don't trust, or because we have not established a culture that allows us to think outside of the box. So that's indoctrination. And then the last one catches people off guard, and is one of my favorite, passion and purpose. We have to exit the attachment to passion and purpose. Yes, we want passion and purpose, but when we use passion and purpose as an excuse, for example, to ignore data or to go in a direction that's not healthy for the organization, or to say my idea is better than yours because mine is attached to passion and purpose, then it gets in a way. So those are the 7 exits.
Awesome. I feel like those sound amazing and it's a lot to unpack. As you were talking, I was definitely thinking it seems like a lot of them hover around and engulf this idea of protection and safety. It seems like a lot of them touch on them. What, in your experience, has driven organizations to have that? You mentioned silos. You mentioned when people don't feel safe, that culture isn't healthy, everybody backs off, they go silent, they focus on protecting themselves. What normally creates that type of environment? And then how does this help combat that?
Yeah. So what I find, and one of my favorite sayings is personal development is professional development. And it's difficult to grow an organization beyond the personal development of its organizers and leaders. So what you often find, not always, there are some of those exceptions, but the larger the organization is or the smaller it is, depending on how it functions, then who that leader is personally is going to impact how that organization functions. And so if I am afraid to take risk, if I am defensive and my value is tied to performance, I'm going to be stuck in hyper ego.
Mm.
If I can't do that for myself personally, I'm not doing it at work. So my consulting work really builds on that. So the beauty of when I'm in these consulting situations is that I can look at systemic things and help develop people personally in a systemic way, so no one has to come to the table with guilt and shame about what their developmental gaps may be in leadership. Because what gets us in leadership is not what gets us through leadership.
Right.
And that's the challenge that people have. I usually get in, I meaning we usually get into leadership because we do a really good job at tasks. There are some tasks that we've done really well. Leadership, Josh, is not about tasks. It's about relationships. And so it turns over. And so we all can fake being the greatest person put together until we get into those challenging relationships. Then it all falls apart. All of our developmental gaps come to the top. And either we will open ourselves up to growth or we will cling to protection mode in hyper ego. Right. And that is what I think we see so much of. We see underdeveloped personalities, minds, psychological energies. And so that's why now we see this trend where organizations are finally getting it, where, oh, we have to have some wellness development here, some kind of way to develop people.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because as you mentioned that, it reminded me of one of the first episodes we had with someone named Rebecca Gebhardt. And she talked about how, exactly what you said. We take the people who are at the top of their leaderboard, the most technical people, the people who are great at their tasks, we throw them into leadership positions, and we just assume you're the best at this task, so you're going to be the best leader, which may not always be true. But then we say, okay, you're good. Go ahead, go do it. And we don't ever do any investment because investment takes sometimes money, definitely takes time. It slows the process down. It's one of those things where you have to slow down to speed up. I'm going to slow down now and invest in you as a leader. So then I can speed up. And in 3 months, you are self-sufficient and we don't need to do anything, as opposed to micromanaging through the process. And I think, like you said, overcoming that hyperego is so important because if we don't build this capability in the leaders, and I feel like that's what we see today with layoffs and productivity, and we throw people in these positions, they're going to do exactly what you just said.
Exactly. And so you have to have people that are at least willing to learn, willing to shift, willing to do some self evaluation. I don't know good leaders who are not constantly thinking about who they are as a human being, not
Right.
just who they are as a leader.
And do you ever see in the hyperego mode, people feel like they constantly have to prove themselves? Because I feel like when somebody feels like they have to prove themselves, that's when you get the ego that has the bad connotation to it. And that's when they get in their own way as a leader. Because when somebody's trying to prove themselves, I feel like they see their team as tools and not people, as not one team. And so, what are your thoughts on that? I know that really wasn't a question, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that people don't feel safe in the leadership positions. So it's interesting. And I can certainly relate myself. Like it feels safe when you're doing that job and you're doing it well. And then all of a sudden, someone puts you in a leadership position. Now people are looking at you instead of you looking at people. And it feels very different. It feels like you're supposed to do something different. But again, the problem is no one really explains to you what that different is. And so that's how we get imposter syndrome. That's how we get, am I really supposed to be here? So I start telling instead of listening. I start demanding instead of building relationships because it's my own insecurity about I need you to make me look good. Because now I'm not at the wheel where I'm doing the thing where I knew how to look good. Now I have to rely on you to make me look good.
Mhm.
And that creates a lot of internal conflict for many of us.
It does. And I feel like it doesn't set anybody up for success. It doesn't set the leader up for success or their team because now it's exactly as you said. I view you as now you are someone who I need you to make me look good. And when you don't, I don't evaluate the situation and go, oh my gosh, I may have put you in a situation that you're not set up for success. Maybe I haven't trained you. I now jump and go, you're making me look bad. And now it's a feedback session and a defensive session instead of saying, maybe there's something that's not where it needs to be in our organization.
A lot of what I try to do in my own consulting is really keep the focus on the organization, not the individual.
Right.
Because whatever happens here, there's some link that wasn't quite tight enough in the organization that allowed this to exist or occur. And when we look at it as an organization, then it gives people a lot more room to grow because risk is okay, novelty is okay, restarting is okay, pauses are okay. But that has to be clear that those are part of how we function in an organization, not things that we are trying to hide and put away.
And then that all ties back to, I think, also the silence and safety. Because as we do all this, now we're going to build a healthy culture that people don't feel like they need to feel silent all the time. And they will bring their ideas up. They will get out of their silos because they don't worry that somebody's going to take their idea. Or if they don't reach the goals that they then told everybody about, they're going to have that embarrassment.
And the truth is, we don't know of any organization that's been successful without some setbacks. And so it's interesting that we still have these as goals or have these as criticisms when we know the reality is that there are going to be setbacks. If there aren't, then you're probably not trying hard enough. Right? If you
Exactly.
haven't failed somewhere along the line, then you have not tried hard enough.
Right.
Your goals are not lofty enough because as they say, our goals should scare us. And sometimes we're not going to reach them. And
Right.
so when we don't, it's information, it's not failure, it's just information.
And you can call it anything. We say you want to celebrate failure. And as long as you're learning from it, it's helpful. And you want to make sure that obviously your goals are reaching enough and challenging enough so you are growing, you are moving forward, but also you don't make them unrealistic enough that every goal you set, we fail at. And then you're just beating down your team because it's like, we got nothing done that we wanted to get done. But we need to figure out how to
Exactly.
normalize that failure is a learning opportunity and it's okay because it means you're reaching for progress.
Or at least that risk is
Right.
an opportunity. And the reality that we know is called risk for a reason
Mhm.
because sometimes we don't get all the way there. And
Right.
so we stop and we look again. Yeah, no one is looking for failure, but we also shouldn't be trying to avoid failure at all costs.
Exactly. Dr. Bakari, I want to talk about one thing that you mentioned with indoctrination, because my, I'll say, favorite in air quotes phrase that I feel like I hear time and time again is that's the way we've always done it.
Ugh.
And I know exactly, me too. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I would love to know how kind of getting people into this is how we do it today, this is how we've always done it, stifles the growth and innovation and progress that we hope to see in our organizations and our culture.
So the question is, okay, so that's how we've done it. What are we protecting? It's great. That's how we've done it. And we can start with that phrase. Let's give it some grace. Let's start with that phrase and say, well, this is how we've always done it. And if we're willing to use that as a starting point, not an end point, it could be really useful. So why did we do it that way? What has changed since we started doing it that way? What can we keep from the way that we used to do it? And what about that way is no longer serving us? As long as it's a starting point, we're good. But when you use that as an end point to avoid risk, to not look at the data, to uninvite novelty, keep people in their place, then growth is not in sight.
And I think the thing that you touched on too is the data part. Everybody hears this and thinks we're going to overhaul the entire thing. And that may not always be the case. Like you said, as long as it's the starting point, there may be portions of what you're trying to change. And that's okay as long as there's data that says, hey, this may not be working, or we have a better way to go do this. Or it would be foolish for any companies right now to not somehow embrace AI and just go, hey, we've been doing this manually for 50 years. And I think AI is great, don't want to take my job, but we're not even going to touch it. And this is the way we've done it. And that's it.
And you do still see people resisting AI. I'm like, that's like people who don't use calculators. I don't need a calculator to do addition and subtraction. You're right. But if I want to do something more complex, if I'm trying to take my business from elementary math to calculus, I need a calculator for that. And AI is very similar to that. So you can not use AI, but it's going to limit what your business can look like.
Exactly. And how do you see, or how do people realize the way that they've always done things, rather than becoming something that they can be proud of and say, I got here because this is the way we've always done it and we've had this consistency? How do they see that it shifts from support to being a barrier to progress?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the complacency, and that's the exit number 5.
Yep.
Look at the complacency that you're addressing. And I have a specific formula for addressing complacency. And so people have to have these conversations with themselves and with their teams about what is it that we're really clinging to? Do we not want to spend the money? Do we not want to hire someone else? Are we afraid of competition? What are the things, if we can write them down, maybe all the team members write them down secretly? What's your biggest fear about moving in this direction? What are you afraid of? What's it going to bring to you? And have these open conversations that are transparent and start from there. That's, again, starting from the human side. We're just individuals here, all coming with our own experiences. Am I afraid that it's going to take over my job? Am I afraid that I'm going to have to work longer hours? One of the things that I constantly keep reminding people, if you could be there with what you are now, you would already be there.
That's exactly right.
Like being somewhere different always requires you to become someone different. Not someone that you don't like, not someone fake, not someone foreign. But the hardest lesson for me was when someone said, you have gotten as far as you could go with who you are now. That was such a painful statement for me. And it took me a couple of years to really grasp that and
Right.
understand that. Wait, what do you mean? It took me so many years to fall in love with myself. Now here I am in love with myself. And you're telling me that's not good enough. That's how it sounds. And that's how it feels to many of us. When someone says, no, I need you to be more, it sounds like a rejection of who you are. And so people get stuck there because we're not responsible for clinging to the version of us that brought us this far. It's okay to create. There's another version of us waiting.
That's the risk, I feel like, to that whole going back to the earlier exit, safety and everything else. We have
Yep.
conflicting wants. We want to move forward. We want to progress. We want to go get the next role. I want to get promoted. I want all these things, but I also want to be safe and complacent. And I want to cling to the things that are familiar. I want to do things that I've been doing the way I've been doing it. And nobody puts it together the way you just did, where it's like everything I've done to get up to now, if I want to be safe and I want to hold on to what I've done and I want to be secretive and all, this is where I'm going to be. But if I want to take that next step, I got to go to Josh 2.0. I can't stay here.
And when you look at how organizations are run, you could see it clearly. And so, in this way, we have to look at successful organizations to then look at how we can behave or shift in ourselves. Like every organization has to change. Like we look at where Netflix came from. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not working at all. Like, how do we shift and change in terms of what we said we wanted to be? Every organization has to do it, but the success of doing it is also related to how every individual in that organization is willing to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think understanding the why behind people's apprehension or their reasons and getting into the purpose too is so important, because a lot of times nobody deep dives. I've had this conversation for some reason many times over this past week where we don't deep dive into behavioral and people focused things. We deep dive into, and I have a manufacturing background, we deep dive into mechanical and electrical
Yep.
issues. We deep dive into breakdowns. We deep dive into systemic issues that are taking my lines down and all this. But then when I have a personnel and organizational issue or something, I don't. And I don't ask why. And I just
Yep.
take it at face value and move on. And I feel like that's the shift we have to start making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the personal development is professional development. Look at who the persons are and how they operating within those systems.
Yep.
And you're right. We often want more how to do instead of how to be.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think you put it perfectly. It all drives back to that complacency side, where it's very easy to get complacent with where we are. And especially when you're successful, it's extremely easy to get complacent. I think you said that earlier in the episode already, where if everything I'm doing is making me get to where I am today and I'm happy with where I am today, yeah, I want to progress. But if it was good enough to make me successful today, it's got to be good enough to make me successful tomorrow. And it is so easy to get complacent and just stop.
The funny thing about that statement is the word today. Like today only lasts 24 hours.
Right.
Like today, like the world's not going to stop here.
Yeah.
And so we're not moving and being visionary in what we want, then where we are today. You don't want to wait until you're 10 years behind to say, oh, I should have done something. Like today is only today. So
Exactly. It's probably a silly comparison to make, but it's like when you want to go and lose weight. Yeah, I want to get to the end point and I can see where I want to go and I can start today, but I'm not going to see where I want to be tomorrow. But if I
that's
don't
right.
start today, I'm never going to get to that end point.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the other thing I'd love to talk about is exit seven, passion and purpose. I feel like passion and purpose is normally spoken so much as a positive. This person is so passionate about these things. I'm doing this job and it's my purpose. I'm supposed to be here. But when you described the exits, it brought a different perspective of passion and purpose. Yes, they can be positives, but they can also create bias against data and reality and all of these things. I'd love to dive more deep into that and what you've seen where, though passion and purpose are positive things, they do tend to get in our way.
And so when they become anchors instead of motivation, then that's a problem. Passion and purpose should never anchor us to ideas or to people or to situations. Sometimes people get in these jobs that initially serve their passion and purpose very well, but then it becomes toxic, whatever, but they're clinging on to passion and purpose. You haven't done passion and purpose in that job for the last 5 years, but you're still clinging to that. So that's one way. And then when we're in organizations and everybody's talking about what their vision is, their purpose is, it's great that you're clinging to passion and purpose, but are you growing the organization in a direction that it needs to be? Or are you just content with talking about passion and purpose? This is what we're doing. See how passionate we are. See what our purpose is here. Okay, but how do we move the conversation beyond that so that we're actually effective in what we say we're going to do. We're passionate about serving our clients or our customers. Okay, that's nice to say. And so you're nice to all of your clients and you're good when people come in, but you're not necessarily giving them the things that are going to make them grow. And you're not necessarily doing the things for your company that are sustainable. So passion and purpose now become anchors instead of helping you take flight.
Do you ever see people cling to passion and purpose and have that cause them to bypass things they should be doing because it doesn't meet their passion and purpose?
Oh, that's a good example. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, passion and purpose oftentimes is an excuse for us to cling to comfort and tradition. And
Right.
so you're absolutely right. So as long as I feel like I'm still in my purpose, I just ignore everything else.
And I feel like I've seen that even where I'm at, where there's something as part of the vision, as part of that call to action that our organization or our company has to go do. But when it doesn't meet the passion and purpose of the group or what everybody wants to go do, it's, how important could it be if I'm not excited about it?
Exactly. And that's so important. And I'll put a reference for entrepreneurs in
Mhm.
particular, because one of the sad parts about being an entrepreneur, again, it's almost like getting that promotion. And so we get into this business because there's something that we really love, that we're really
Mhm.
passionate and feel purposeful about. That's every entrepreneur.
Right.
We come into this thing with full of passion and purpose. And then that becomes 20% of what you do.
Yeah.
And so many entrepreneurs exit because they just can't get that 80%. They can't commit
Right.
to that 80% of what they don't want to do because they really want to be in the passion and purpose. So they never get to the business end of it. There are some entrepreneurs that are hobbyists that turn entrepreneurs. We're not talking about venture capital, all that stuff, but as
Right.
hobby turned entrepreneurs, we come in with so much passion and then we have to find our way through the business world and it stinks. And so
Yeah.
if you can either cling to your passion and purpose, or you have to really release a lot of that and then start doing the things that get you to the other side. But one day you can again focus on your passion and purpose. There's a number of years where
Yeah.
you're not invested in passion and purpose. You're invested in building a business. They're not the same.
No, there's enough of it a little bit to keep you going, but it's all that extra stuff that isn't part of passion and purpose that is just as, if not more important, you got to go do.
You gotta go do. You gotta go do.
Yep. You're so right. I think people need to internalize that a little more because it
Yeah.
always seems to come as a shock. But I honestly have loved everything I've heard so far. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with everybody before we wrap everything up?
I'm excited. One, of course, let me give the plug for the book,
Yeah.
Seven X's Leave Behind What No Longer Serves You. Again, it's the basis, it's the framework for so many things. And I love this framework because it is so flexible. It easily lends itself to personal growth as well as business growth if you're
Mhm.
willing to look at it that way or look at it for that reasons. So if people are interested in learning more about the 7Xs, just go to 7xs.com or you'll have some links in there. But I would love to support people in whatever way that, they think the 7Xs might be relevant to them in their lives.
Definitely. And I think, as you've said a few times in this episode so far, personal growth is professional growth. And so that's something
Absolutely.
else. Internalize, hold
Absolutely.
on to something I feel like so simple that is so wise because it is true.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot.
I have too. And like you said, I'll make sure for everybody, all of the links are available. I'll make sure there's a link to your book as we do the posting and we have this on the YouTube page and everything. Any other links that you'd like to share, we'll make sure we have for everybody. And then if anybody wants to get in touch with Dr. Rosenna Bakari, I'll have all of her information there. But of course, send me an email if you want to get in touch with her. And for whatever reason you can't, and we'll get you all in contact with each other. Remind everybody one more time, it was The Seven Exits, Leaving Behind What No Longer Serves You is the book. Definitely check it out. I feel like so far we've gotten like the movie preview, right? This episode
Yeah.
is giving everybody an idea, a little taste of what it is, but obviously I'm sure we jump in a lot deeper in the book. So highly encourage
Yeah,
everybody to go
absolutely.
in. And if you want, you can like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast here, found on all the podcast platforms that we have. It's my Instagram at Leading Quarters, to my YouTube page at Leading Quarters, and email me with any questions or ideas that you have for future episodes at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But Dr. Rosenna Bakari, thank you so much. This has been eye-opening. It's stuff that I feel like you kind of touch on through your daily life, and it's okay, this makes sense. But when you kind of sum it all up the way you have in this episode, and I'm sure you have in the book, it's definitely something you want to stop and think about and reflect on and internalize, because this is the kind of game-changing thought process that people need to start having, especially today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.